तुम्ही पधारो मां अनंत प्रकाशिनी अमित बलदायिनी. With this prayer on my lips, I bow down at the lotus feet of everyone in front of me, of Lord Vasudeva who dwells in our hearts. That sums up, that one sentence sums up the whole personality of Sri Aurobindo. As I might have told you earlier, on earlier occasions as well, I always would like to recall that statement to myself because I want to remind myself what Sri Aurobindo was all about or is all about. There is no past tense when it comes to Sri Aurobindo. There is no past tense when it comes to Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Sri Aurobindo wrote as much in English or perhaps more than what Sri Adi Shankara wrote in Sanskrit. The Hindus forget this fact. Those who profess Sanatana Dharma and those who are proficient in English must have taken up this responsibility of telling this not only to India but to the world for the benefit of the mankind. Not because it pleases me, because it would benefit the mankind. Now, before I talk about the book, I must thank Sri Ajit Ji for his kind words about me and the little work that I did around Sri Aurobindo's thoughts. I always advise people who want to read Savitri not to read Savitri in the beginning. That should not be the first book of Sri Aurobindo that one should be reading. I would always recommend that they go to another small little book which I saw in late 70s or 80s, which I bought from Pondicherry Ashram bookshop, which is titled as Art, Literature and Poetry. If you want to understand Savitri as an epic poem, you should know what poetry is all about, what art is all about, much more than poetry. Because poetry is placed in the larger circle of art and literature. So unless you have a glimpse of it, an understanding of this broad area, broad subject. In fact, Sri Aurobindo was an academician, a scientist, much more than a yogi. Those who believe that he is a yogi, who want to take to that pathway, they're more welcome to do so. But to me, he is an academician par excellence. And this is what I did as an academician. I used to go to the classroom to teach neurophysiology about the human brain to MSc students, MSc physiology. And also there were some PhD candidates who were doing research on brain. I used to begin my lecture with the statement that Sri Aurobindo was the first neurophysiologist of this world. Neurophysiologist par excellence. Who gave the knowledge about the human brain and its functioning for the very first time in this world? It was Sri Aurobindo, not an American scientist who got the Nobel Prize later in 1980s, late 80s. And when did Sri Aurobindo give us this knowledge about human brain? In 1910, in the magazine Arya. You can see that in one of the volumes, it will be there. The Nobel lecture that this Perry Roja, the name is Perry Roja, has given on the Nobel Prize, on getting this Nobel Prize, you will find many phrases from this essay written by Sri Aurobindo in Arya magazine. Now, I'm not praising Sri Aurobindo for nothing. This passage was shown to me by another scientist. As scientists, as academicians, those who came in contact with Sri Aurobindo's writings, we are always excited about it. It may be a small number. The person, the scientist who showed me this Nobel lecture of Sperry Roger, when he got the Nobel Prize for his work on human brain, and then the essay on magazine, Arya, he asked me, do you think he copied from Arya? I said, no, because the subject is same. He has to say the same thing. That's Sri Aurobindo wrote in 1910. If you want to say what left hemisphere of the brain, human brain does, what the right hemisphere of the human brain does, it has to be same words. It cannot be very different. We both were surprised and astonished. And he was professor of metallurgy in the Indian Institute of Science, who became pro-vice chancellor of one of the universities in Kerala. So I'm mentioning all these things to say that those of us, scientists or academicians, who were fortunate enough to come in contact with Sri Aurobindo's writings, knew the truth, but we have failed to transmit it widely. Why should we transmit it widely? Of course, you can ask me the question as spiritual seekers. You are spiritual seekers. Why should I go about tom-tomming what Sri Aurobindo said about human brain? But it has a relationship with the growth of the human civilization itself, because the growth of civilization depends on the knowledge systems. It's obvious. It all depends on the wheel that the civilization has discovered. Of course, we are reinventing the wheel again and again and again. Besides the wheel, we are inventing many other things as well, which are not necessary for the growth of the civilization. Now, the book begins, in fact, with the account of our visit. Jonathan, he mentioned, Rajit Sabnitji mentioned Jonathan Rawson, who is the director and founder of one organization called Perspectiva. He happened to be my son-in-law as well. I was very particular that he should write about this book because he was a psychologist qualified from Oxford University and qualified in philosophy from Harvard University. He took his PhD from Harvard University, and the title of his PhD thesis is Wisdom. W-I-S-D-O-M. That's all. Wisdom. He wrote a PhD thesis on that word, one word, wisdom. I thought I had a rather policy. I wanted a Londoner. He lives in London. My daughter lives there, so they both live in London. I wanted a Londoner to write about Once Upon a Londoner. You know, Sri Aurobindo was once upon a Londoner at a very early age. At the age of 7 years, he was brought and left in London. And only at the age of 21, he returned to India. So this was actually my plan. I want a Londoner to write about Once Upon a Londoner. And what did he write? We both visited the school where Sri Aurobindo studied, where he was admitted. That is called St. Paul's School, London. If you have heard, our Home Minister, Rajit C was also there. He mentioned with a little bit of pride, which is, I think, is legitimate, that A.B. Purane is the first Indian. In fact, he's a Gujarati, he said, Home Minister. Naturally, with a little justified pride, he was the first Gujarati, first Indian who wrote the biography of Sri Aurobindo. He was also the first Indian who visited the school where Sri Aurobindo studied in London, St. Paul's School. What did he do there? He did something remarkable. He saw the original progress reports of Sri Aurobindo. A.A. Ghosh, he used to be called at that time. Original progress reports wherein his teachers have made remarks on his progress. And I can claim with legitimate pride, I am the second Indian who saw these reports in the originals. We were permitted, I and Jonathan were permitted to spend one forenoon with these reports, looking at them, admiring them, and then gently touching them, because they are old pages, you see. We are permitted to take photographs, but not to publish them. The archivist was very particular, but I did not tell the truth that A.B. Purani has published one progress report at least in the biography that he wrote. I did not tell that truth to the archivist. Let's sleep. And we did take photographs, but naturally I could not show them. But I think privately, I think we can see that. One day, I think I'm going to show it to Ajit ji first.
I need to see the original.
Yes. Don't tell anybody, because he's in touch with the very home minister. So I must be careful. So I will show you this. What is extraordinary about these progress reports? What is extraordinary is, at the age of 7 or 8 or 9 years, he used to write essays in English of extraordinary quality, which were beyond the comprehension of his teachers sometimes, some passages. Too flowery, very high standard. And why wouldn't he write Savitri at that level? This is what we must understand. He wrote Savitri in such a manner that came naturally to him. And don't think that it all flew from his yoga. No. Because when we mix up yoga and Savitri, people think that only yogis can write that, only yogis can understand that. How can I understand poor soul? This false impression has been created at one point of time in the history, like many other false impressions have been created in the course of Indian history. I will come to that a little later, because it has relevance for today's education and education of all times to come. Then naturally, he was sent to Cambridge with a scholarship, with the facility of appearing for ICS examination of those days. He could have easily joined the ICS service, but somehow he failed to turn up for the horse riding test because he did not want. I mean, it is said, it's not openly said, but it is understood, it is implied that he did not really want to serve the British as an ICS officer. So he did not appear for the horse riding test. That's a different story. Then when he came back to India, he was 21 years old, 21 years age. That means from 7 to 21. He was in London, Cambridge. 14 years, like Rama's Vanavas. So it was a sort of, I mean, for me, it was a sort of Vanavas. I can tell you, even today, when compared to Bangalore life, I like Bangalore life, not London life. I've been there. I've spent winters there. I've spent many seasons there, in Oxford, for example, and also in US. But I tell you, there is no land like India, wherever the sun be. As Tennyson said, there is no land like England, wherever the light be, wherever the sun be. See, he was eulogizing his own land. This is our land. This is where we were born, and this is where we were supposed to derive benefits of yoga. I'm not deriding. He was yogi and he could do many other things. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But when people get mixed up, there has been a lot of misunderstanding about his yoga. And then that is the reason, one reason why he was always kept at a pedestal. He was not approached. He was not approached even for reading his essays in Arya and other magazines. He wrote on several subjects. He was not just a yogi. You see, the education, science, and culture, all these three go together. United Nations has got an organization, educational, scientific, and cultural organization, which was established in late 50s by UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, and they picked up a professor from Oxford to head that organization. to spread education, science, and culture. You see, they are all related, so closely related. And you would be benefited by looking at all the three in the proper perspective. And that's the reason why they have established this organization in late 50s and picked up a professor at Oxford to head that organization. After 6 years, that is the first term, he was asked to continue for another term. And he wrote an extraordinary book on all beings and all creatures, wherein at the end of the book, he wrote a chapter on Homo sapien. Till then, the zoologist will never look at human being as a prani, as somebody who has to be studied, until this UNESCO professor has come and wrote a chapter on Homo sapiens. So that means we might have come as a pinnacle of evolution, but still we share so many properties of all the creatures. That's the point he was trying to make. In fact, he wrote many other essays also about Homo sapiens and how they are same as other creatures, they are also different from other creatures. This is something that we have to remember. And there is another professor in United States of America. He was the grandson, he is the grandson of actually Dr. Kuppuswamy Iyengar, who was a member, who was the oldest member of our Constituent Assembly. This is the Aurobindo's work and writings and contributions have so much to do with human beings, societies, and all that. I cannot help entering into these realms. The Doyen jurist, Kuppuswamy Iyengar, who was a member of the Constituent Assembly, was respected by Rajendra Prasad and Nehru and all other respected members. When Ambedkar was asked to draft the constitution, do you know what he told Rajendra Prasad and Nehru? Do you know that part of the history, glorious chapter of Indian history? He said very humbly, sir, when a doyen like Sir Kuppuswamy Iyengar is sitting here in the Constituent Assembly as a member, why do you want me to draft the constitution? He was a young man, but a brilliant young man who was again supported by Baroda Maharaja. I mean, there is a relation between Baroda Maharaja and Ambedkar, between Baroda Maharaja and Sri Aurobindo also. You see, the history is meshed with all these extraordinary events in those days. Then Nehru convinced him, yes, but we knew Kuppuswamy Iyengar is here. He will guide you with all his wisdom and knowledge, because we don't want to trouble him at this age. He was very old at this age, but you can go and get his guidance at any time you want. And they also made physical arrangements of the rooms in such a manner that Ambedkar could anytime go and ask for his advice. So his grandson is in USA now, Kuppuswamy Iyengar's grandson, who is a psychiatrist, because Ajit's mandate to me was to explain what this neuroaesthetics is all about. That's the reason why I am bringing Dr. Kuppuswamy Iyengar's grandson, who is a medical doctor, who is a psychiatrist, who coined this term. And he also wrote more than 2 books on the same subject, bringing in Sri Shankara, Adi Shankara, bringing in again this Mityavad or Mayavad, whatever you call it. Mayavad was interpreted by him through this aesthetic sense, aesthetic sensibilities. Now, if you look at his lectures, if you read his lectures, they're all available on YouTube. And he works in California University. I hope I'll remember his name at the end of my talk. He used to come to Bangalore quite often in those days, but now I think he himself is not well. See, one of the things that triggered his thinking on Mayavad was, because it is there in the book. I mentioned it in the book. Yes. So that shows I'm getting old. And he used to give extraordinarily brilliant lectures in Jain Tata Auditorium on human brain. You have heard? Extraordinarily brilliant lectures on human brain. That is the connection between him and Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo wrote about human brain in 1910, and he is giving lectures today correlating with Mayavad, Sri Shankara's Mayavad. How did it happen? It happened because it's a very interesting story. Somebody lost a limb in an accident, car accident in America, but he used to feel the pain as though that limb existed. Pain was there. That means that pain sensation would not go away even though the limb has gone away. So he used to feel a sensation, painful sensations. Then he came. Phantom limb phenomenon now has become very famous. Phantom limb phenomenon is the basis for that books and aesthetic sensibilities also. What he did was, he just showed that limb, the limb that existed in a mirror. You see? So he thought, the patient thought that his limb was not gone. His limb is there, that limb existed, but the pain is gone. So that sensation of pain is gone because he was made to believe that he still has got that limb. And so there is no possibility of sensation of pain. The limb is there. So where is the sensation of pain? Only when the limb is gone, the pain is there. He was made to believe just through a mirror. See, he held a mirror in such a way that he could see his other hand. So he thought his other hand is his left hand, right hand is the left hand. The pain is, then he exclaimed, "Doctor, the pain is gone. It is gone. What is gone? Pain is gone." "Oh, don't worry. If it's gone, it is good. I can give you a number of mirrors to you because it doesn't cost much. It costs only $1. So he gives such extraordinarily brilliant lectures, this scientist, this brain scientist, using this phantom limb. That's called phantom limb phenomenon. So it comes very close to my. That means even if it doesn't exist, you feel it exists.
Sir, for this, Sudhamurthy's father, who was a gynecologist, R.H. Kulkarni, he also had similar experience, and he has also published an article on this.
Yes.
This happened in Hubli KMC Hospital, where he talks about this experience. Also.
Exactly. Even in Trivandrum, there is a Suchitra Institute of Medical Sciences. This kind of surgery was given up long ago, but now Suchitra in Trivandrum, there was a pioneering neurosurgeon there. So he started this kind of surgeries, and so we came to know of all these phenomena. So there is nothing mysterious about spirituality. There is nothing mysterious about science, because we are talking about what is existing or what is not existing. We have to have that sense of discrimination. What exists, what does not exist. This is the whole essence of Sanatana Dharma. If you look into the details, you will know that Mayavad is real Vad. I would call it real Vad. Mayavad is the real Vad, actually. Reality is Maya. Though we think Maya is reality. It may be difficult to understand the first instance, but if you go into the details, you will know what existed yesterday does not exist today. So what was real yesterday is not real today. What is real today is not going to be real tomorrow. It keeps on changing. So what is it that we are trying to keep alive? What is that we are trying to hang on to is the big question that we will not go into at this point of time. But concerning the presentation of different cantos, I will just show you just one or two in order to show you how brilliant the artist is, because he was a film director who directed Sampurna Ramayana. In fact, I saw that film Sampurna Ramayana in one of the theaters in Bangalore, which does not exist now. Minerva, Minerva. Yeah, a circle is there. Minerva circle is there. Yes. I and my family, we saw that film there. Extraordinarily beautiful film because he himself was a great artist. And when he presents Savitri, I think let me begin with the cover itself. What is portrayed here is the introduction of Savitri to us for the first time. How is Savitri introduced for the first time? How do we perceive her personality? When she comes back after touring many forests and many towns in search of a vara, a suitable vara, Varanveshana, she goes on tour in her own chariot. When she comes back to the palace, Narada was sitting there. Her mother was also there. Her father was there. It's not shown here. What happens is, she announces that I have chosen my vara. Happened to be Satyavan. That statement she makes. Narada hears that. Her mother also hears that. Then Narada pronounces the fate of Satyavan. So naturally, he tried to persuade. There's a long discussion which we have to go through in Savitri about the fate and things like that. But he is not endowed with long life. So she was persuaded. Savitri was persuaded to choose another suitable boy, let us say, because Satyavan is going to live only for an year after her wedding. Her mother also says the same thing. And then this mudra, and those of you who are familiar with this art form, this dance will know that this is denial. No, I will not choose another. That is the mudra here in the Natya Shastra. You see, we have never separated any Shastras, whether it's Natya Shastra or, Kavitvam, poetry, anything, arts, for example. Now, in fact, this Mayavad and things like that, they profusely illustrated. In fact, these essays, you will find a lot of bronze Shilpa Kala. You see the description of Nataraja, what it means. There is a meaning of in Nataraja's dance. And these artistic forms convey a lot more than the words. So what words convey in Savitri, this picture conveys much, much more. This is our first introduction to Savitri and her personality. Why she was giving so much of importance not to change her mind? That the secret of conjugal bliss. Choice is firmly made. So they are faithful. The partners, marital partners are faithful to each other. They are going to be the parents of the children who need to be brought up in a particular manner so that it helps them and it helps the society in which they live. This is the whole secret of the family. And we knew this without anybody teaching us. It comes naturally to at least the Hindu society. Let me claim that with a little pride. People may criticize, there are flaws in this. Yes, there could be a flaw here and there in anything, but the marriage system by and large, which leads to conjugal bliss and conjugal fidelity, is the fulcrum, is the basis of a strong family on which you will bring up the children in such a manner that they will be useful to themselves as well as to the society at large. So that is the reason why Savitri is portrayed here as somebody who is faithful to that law of marriage. Now, in fact, the day after tomorrow, not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow is Vata Savitri Vratam. I hope you know that, right? That is, in some parts of India, they celebrate it. Andhra Pradesh, I think they celebrate in some districts. What is Vata Savitri Vrata? Now, taking this as the basis, they go to a Vata Vriksha, banyan tree. He is supposed to be Mahavishnu. I mean, we worship. That is why it's called Vata Savitri Vratam. It is Savitri Vratam done under a Vata Vriksham. You go to a Vata Vriksham, offer, the deity, Savitri. They go around the tree and they invite friends and relatives and partake, feast there, and then pray for the well-being of the entire family. Even the husbands can do this vratam. Last night I heard somebody's lecture, that is Dr. Narasimha Rao, who recently got Padma Shri award. I was listening to his lecture, explaining what is the significance of this Vata Savitri Vrata. So Savitri still lives among us. She has not disappeared. Even today in the Kali Yuga, Savitri is worshipped, praying her to give the same strength of mind and heart to be faithful, to be blessed with that conjugal bliss. Now, why did I mention about this Vata Savitri Vrata? I mentioned this because there is a book written by a professor from Columbia University who visited India in 1980s. She went around and was very much attracted by Benares temples. And one of the temples that she was enchanted by is Savitri's temple. Sankatahara, they call it, the name might have been transformed over a period of time. A different name might have been given, but she described, this professor from Columbia University, who did not know anything about Savitri or any other thing that is related to Savitri, described, I have got that book with me, with a photograph of that temple, where people go and offer prayers on this Vata Savitri Vratam. And she eulogized, look, this must have happened in the days of Mahabharata, long ago, because this story comes from Mahabharata, as Aditi mentioned. Because Savitri was held as an example of conjugal bliss, which is, who is herself a deity, and her character was such that Draupadi also is of the same character. Who told this? Markandeya Maharshi, who himself has conquered death. You know that. Markandeya was about to be taken by Lord Yama, but he prayed Lord Shiva, and he was actually, this Mrityu Devata had to retreat and go away, leaving Markandeya alive. He is still supposed to be alive. Now, Markandeya was telling this story of Savitri to Yudhishthira to encourage him to be happy, not to be downtrodden, not to feel the agony of losing the kingdom, because Draupadi is with you as your consort. Because Draupadi is of such character that because of her, you will get back your kingdom. That was the assurance given by none other than the Markandeya to Yudhishthira, Dharmaraja. So the character of Savitri, Draupadi, and Sita, and he also mentioned there was another lady called Sita in the Ramayana Yuga. These ladies, these three women, are of the same highest character. So long as Draupadi is with you as your consort, you have nothing to worry. You will get back to your kingdom. That was the assurance given by Markandeya Maharshi. Now, this is the story in the Mahabharata. And this professor from Columbia University, who was writing about this temple in Benares and the Vata Savitri Vratam that the locals perform, on a particular day in the year, she was mentioning this story in her book. Because she went back to the original source and fished out this information. You see, this is the story that has happened in the Mahabharata Kala. But even today, India is true to the spirit, is true to these values. She's an American. She is not an Indian. I don't think she was a BJP member or RSS member. She was academician, pure and simple, from Columbia University. I got the photographs of the temple in Benares. So, Bharat as a country, of course, I was very happy to hear Ajit ji while he was proposing vote of thanks in Pondicherry, where Home Minister was inaugurating the celebration, about Akhanda Bharat. May I, with the permission of Ajit ji, say that Akhanda Bharat must also be Virat Bharat. Why? Why Virat Bharat? We were always Virat Bharat. We have lost it. We think we got independence on 15th August, as though we were not independent before 15th August. We were always independent in spirit. That is what is important. That is what matters. We have become slaves of the circumstances. We have become victims of the times. I do not know how it happened. A nation of this proportion, see, though of course it was broken up into small kingdoms without unity, then we became slaves. And then that slavery ended on a particular day. So we should be actually celebrating, I propose, 15th August as our victory day, not as Independence Day. I'm ashamed to call myself independent only from 15th August. No.
In fact, there is a reference to Shrivatiko in Vande Mataram.
Yes.
He says this was actually coincidences. People in Pondicherry asked me, why you have chosen 7th of August? They had no answer. Then when I was glancing through, he said, somewhere in 1905, 7th of August, India got independence.
Yes.
Its two independence happened already then.
Yes. Subhash Chandra Bose.
30, 40 years back. And then that was physically expressed on 15th of August 1940.
Yes.
So August 7th actually is the first independence.
Yeah, there are many errors. In fact, Subhash Chandra Bose also declared independence. We forgot about that, as we forgot about Sri Aurobindo also. In fact, no Prime Minister mentioned, as far as I can remember, that 15th August happens to be the birthday of Sri Aurobindo also. I wrote to Modi when he became Prime Minister. He made an announcement at the Red Fort. I'm not saying because I wrote, he mentioned it. They knew much better. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody used to recall. This is the tragedy of this country. We do not know about ourselves. It was Sri Aurobindo who did a great deal of service. You see, actually after, and I must also mention, in fact, I'll stop another 10 minutes maybe. Is it okay? 10 minutes? Because, but for Sri Aurobindo returned to Pondicherry, we would not have got all that knowledge about everything. How many volumes now? 45 volumes or 48 volumes?
37.
37 volumes now. We were hoping it will go up to 45. I think we should display at least the contents. I mean, this is a humble suggestion. The content, I get maybe too much. At least the contents in each volume, so that people who are interested, who can see the contents, can go back to that particular volume and go through it and get all the information that is necessary. This is a humble suggestion I am giving.
Yes.
To all the centers. Because nobody knows. Nobody knows that we have 37 volumes of knowledge hidden, written by Sri Aurobindo, a living person, and who studied in St. Paul's School, London, who studied in Cambridge. And his language was extraordinary because he studied there, and innately he must have had this akarshan, see, this attraction to the flowery language, because some people are born And we have many poets in Sanskrit like that, because we do not know. We know neither Sanskrit nor English to the required level. That's the reason why we are unable to perceive or appreciate to the level that is required. That's all the reason. If we learn, we can appreciate. There's no problem about that. We don't know. If you can learn to speak in Sanskrit within a week. In fact, there are 3 villages in Karnataka, I was told. There are 3 in Madhya Pradesh and 2 or 1 village somewhere else, where all the people speak only in Sanskrit. Everyone speaks only in Sanskrit. So it's not as though it's impossible, but we just forgot. We just gave up many things. That's the reason. And I was mentioning, but for one lady who used to be known as Sister Nivedita, we forgot her also. We don't remember the contribution of Sister Nivedita to our freedom. But for Sister Nivedita's persuasion, it is written, it is historical truth. Sri Aurobindo would not have left Calcutta, and he would have probably ended up in Andaman. And as Nivedita warned, Sister Nivedita warned Sri Aurobindo on one midnight, you will end up in Andaman and die of malaria if you do not leave the British India here and now. Come on, leave immediately. He left one midnight. You know, that is history. He went to Chandranagore, not under British rule, French rule. But for some reason, he thought he should move to Pondicherry, far south, who was again not British territory, French territory. But for Sister Nivedita. But you see, until Sister Nivedita told, he was very active in writing, in advising youngsters like Bahrain, his own brother, and other revolutionaries. He was giving a lot of advice. He just gave up the whole thing and came to Pondicherry. But even when he came to Pondicherry, the British were after him. In fact, one officer came and saw a classic in Greek in the drawing room, and he asked, "Who reads this book? Who reads such classics?" I said, "Sri Aurobindo." "Oh, somebody who reads such classics, can he be a traitor? Can he do anything wrong?" No. I will not arrest him. He went away. So, but for his stay in Pondicherry, we would not have had these 37 volumes, as Jajitsi mentioned. Then started his yoga. You see, because it is British territory. And I must also recall and say with gratitude that mother also was responsible for Sri Aurobindo's. In fact, solely responsible perhaps. She took care of everything and then left Sri Aurobindo free to indulge in whatever he wanted to indulge in, whether it is the yoga, Savitri, or all those 37 volumes, all the matter that the jnana, the knowledge that fills 37 volumes. But for mother, Sri Aurobindo perhaps would not have been able to be free and write all those volumes. So we must be grateful. India must be grateful to these 2 women. One is Sister Nivedita. Who was Sister Nivedita? She was the daughter or granddaughter of a general of the what's the territory that always keeps fighting with England? Irish. Yes, Irish general. Her grandfather was Irish army general who was always fighting with the British for their own independence. That is the spirit which was carried by Sister Nivedita. You see, Sister Nivedita was so helpful. She wrote so many books on Hinduism and other things. She was very close to Sri Aurobindo, and she was the one who advised him to leave the British territory in those days and go to some other place so that he would escape again one arrest, and he would have probably been sent to Andaman, as it used to happen in those days. And then the mother, who happened to be a French lady. See, these are the 2 women who were responsible for Sri Aurobindo's blessings to us. We must remember. I mean, today I think Yes. Full name?
That's what is mentioned in the book.
Yes, he was Dr. Ramchandran, who is in USA, contemplative man. So Krishna has reminded me because he typed it so many times. I kept on changing sentence after sentence.
It's a privilege, sir, to have that.
Yes, Ramchandran. And these two women, why I am mentioning this? We are forgetting. You see, we should remember those who helped us. Otherwise, we are not grateful to them, right? I think they are not, my point is, they are not getting enough recognition by India. That is why I am saying, Akhanda Bharat is also Virat Bharat. Virat Bharat came into being because of these two women. And we worship three goddesses, Mahalakshmi, Mahakali in the center, and Maha Saraswati. These are the original concept, in fact, which we forgot in our fights between Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Thattism, thisism. Where was Hanumanta born? What does it matter where Hanumanta was born? You see, these are all inanities. These are all fallacious things. These are all things which are not important. What is important is that centrality of thought that we always worship three deities. And in fact, Manidvipa, who resides in Manidvipa? Adishakti, this Mahakali, who is in the center of these three deities, and all other deities, 33 crores, wait for her orders. Each one of them carries her orders. That's the concept. In fact, in Savitri also, you will find all these things as undercurrents. You may miss that, but if you read carefully, you must read every word. You must read every sentence and absorb. In fact, very honestly, I am telling you, it was very difficult for me. In fact, I mentioned it in this book, to move away from one line to the other line. Because I just went into sort of, I should say, coma. See the beauty, the sweetness of that one sentence held me so strongly that I could not move away from that sentence to another sentence. But when I move to the other sentence, it connects so beautifully. You know, it makes so much of meaning that I must move to the other line. That I had to tell myself always. It was very difficult. Very honestly, I'm sharing with my spiritual friends. I cannot tell a lie. It was difficult for me to move away from one line to another line. Because each line stands by itself and yet connects to the other line so beautifully to make a story. Now, these three deities working, ordering, and in fact, the centrality is Mahakali. You see, that's the reason why Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was attached so much to Mahakali. She is the one who gives orders to all other deities and gets things done. It doesn't mean that you don't worship from tomorrow Hanuman. No, it doesn't mean that. From each deity, you derive a few things. You see, there is no doubt about it. There is no dispute about that. But we have forgotten what unites Sanatana Dharma. What unites Sanatana Dharma is, because this is not my story. This is not the story of Savitri. This is the story told by Vedavyasa himself. There is no authority greater than Vedavyasa for us, or Sri Shankara. What are you doing in, for example, Lalita Sahasranamam? You are praising that deity, the central deity, Mahakali, in various forms. His manifestation in different forms for performing different things, different. See, for example, she has to kill a Rakshasa. She has to bless somebody. See, we have this vividhata, but also ekata. We forgot that. We keep fighting and then giving importance to those things which are not important. All the time submitting to you humbly, we must remember this centrality of thought. These deities, Manidvipa is very important. It's all there in Brahmanda Purana. which was written by Vedavyasa himself. But in our smallness of mind, we keep fighting for that and this, forgetting this centrality of these deities. And since the day after tomorrow is Vata, Savitri, Vrata, I thought it is relevant to mention the importance of these deities. And even in day-to-day life, we must remember this and translate and transform this centrality of thought into some form of action, and not only in words. And why things contrary to such things are happening today is because I think we forgot this centrality of thought. The mother, in fact, I can go on and on as my physiology will take me to obstetrics also, because I can get evidences from obstetrics that woman is the one who does everything, and she undergoes so much of pain. She waits for the birth, and the childbirth is not simple. It has got a lot of pain. In fact, the baby has to screw itself down through the birth canal. Obstetricians will tell you. Obstetrics textbooks will give you pictures how the baby has to screw itself down through the birth canal. So much of suffering she bears. And then you watch anybody on the street. I keep wondering, anytime, you always see a woman holding a baby. Small workers, roadside workers, building construction workers. Man is not holding the baby. She gives birth, she takes care. Have you ever seen? Have you ever wondered? I always keep wondering, anytime, how many times I see this other, but every time I pay my respects to that woman who is holding her baby like this in the hot sun. It's only the woman who is taking care of the baby, not the man. I'm telling you the truth. These are all things taken for granted. Let us not. Let us remember this. This is the centrality of thought in Savitri or Amrutham Gamaya also. If we adhere to this concept, then I think we may break this cycle, because cycle is not going to end. See, birth after birth after birth. This is not the end of the birth. Amrutham will not give you the end of birth, because there is another birth, there is another birth, there is another. If we want to cut that cycle, then we have to adhere to certain truths of sympathy and sharing with others what we have, what little we have, and then feeling that oneness of humanity, that we are all one. He is like my brother, he is like my sister. That will release us from this bondage of dukkha. Releasing from the bondage of dukkha is Amrutham. That is what is called Amrutham Gamaya. And nothing else will give us the happiness that we are seeking in this birth. And ending this cycle of birth and death and is also important, our philosophers have emphasized. But how much importance you give that yourself is left to you, individualized. This is individual freedom. Thank you very much for your patient listening, and I am honored.
Thank you, Dr. T. Ramakrishna, for sharing your precious experience with us. The importance of hearing those Savitri, the faithful, the Savitri, which is the one which not only all obstacles, but whatever the body itself. She has invaluable contribution to Indian culture and the spoke Amrutham and inquiring into the new mystics of poetry of Savitri, the epic poem like Tree of the World. Friends, we end in our once again, and the question is dear audience, the book Amrutham Gamaya released today is put up say the count behind an inaugural count of 10% for today's special session. Also, few copies of the Sri South translated by Dr. Ramakrishna is also available. People can have a look at it. As a part of Sri Aurobindo 150th World Anniversary, we once again remind all present here about the national program of 7th August at Nippon Convention Center, Bangalore, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. All are welcome. In this connection, we honestly appeal to generously donate and support us in taking forward all the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the all donations enjoy the tax under the Section 83 of 19. On this auspicious occasion, the study comprising articles in Kannada and English on Sri Aurobindo and his hospital works is also being released. We humbly request you to join hands in this noble cause by donating generously to advertisement. Once again, the book Amrutham Gamaya contributed. And we close with the importance of the special day today, the truth behind the lyrics of the mother herself has said. She, the mother, has said that each and every molecule of Sri Aurobindo's body is filled with consciousness. That consciousness is not a modern thing which ceases with the death of the physical body. If that were so, we wouldn't feel such extraordinary strength when we touch someone. We have learned that wherever the relics are enshrined, there dwell such peace and tranquility. Relics are the living presence of Sri Aurobindo, imbued with the light and force of his lifelong study. Just as an atom contains an infinite power in itself. This is the truth behind the relics. The relics help us to build the consciousness of the psychic and make our progress natural and easy. Well, friends, thank you once again, and we close the session with 1 minute silence.